So a new podcast in the description. I talked about that crazy comeback from the Thunder against the Jazz, and then I previewed the rest of that series. And now it's time to preview another series, the Pelicans and the Warriors. A series that could end up being pretty uneventful, but at the same time, maybe it could end up being exciting. A decent amount of it depends on whether Steph Curry is going to play or not. If he's not in there, then obviously that closes the playing field quite a bit. And even if he is in there, I mean, we have to assume he's not himself. But even a 75 to 85% Steph Curry makes a huge difference. But we can talk about this anyway. So the first interesting thing about this series would be that the way that the Pelicans beat the Blazers in round one is not going to work against these Warriors. And a lot of that is just because the Warriors' style of play makes it to where the Pelicans just won't be able to do the things that they did in round one. Like Portland, I think Portland runs like the most pick and rolls in the NBA or something like that. And the Pelicans just trapped it every time, and the Blazers really didn't know what to do with it. The Warriors run the least amount of pick and rolls in the entire league. Now, I think their offense is a little more simple when Curry is not in there, but still, they're a team who likes to move the ball. There's off-ball movement, there's off-ball cuts, there's handoff plays, and you can't really trap those sort of things. I mean, I guess you could attempt to trap handoffs, but I don't know how well it would actually work for you. So you can kind of throw all that out the window. Number two, for as good as Jrue Holiday was defensively in the first round, he was facing a guy in Damian Lillard who is a similar size to him, right? If Jrue is defending like Klay Thompson, for example, he could play good defense on Klay, and Klay is just going to make a shot over him anyway. If he ends up on Kevin Durant, same thing. And let's say Steph Curry is in the series. I mean, kind of similar. Because Curry, like, look, Lillard's a really good shooter. But Curry is Curry, of course. So Jrue's defensive wizardry that he pulled off in round one, it's going to be a little more difficult. Now, I'm not saying he still won't have his moments. He probably will, because he's a really good defender, and if you get physical with Klay and Curry, if he plays, and Durant, you can still have some good things happen. I mean, we've seen Chris Paul be able to defend Kevin Durant in the low post. That was a few years ago, but it's possible, nonetheless. What else did the Pelicans do defensively well? I don't remember, but those were the two big things against the Blazers, was that Jrue was really good, and then they trapped it on all the screens, and you're not going to be able to do that as much against these Warriors. And I think that was kind of like the main point of that first round series. As far as the Pelicans' offense, I mean, a lot of it was like Anthony Davis just going crazy, and then Rondo being aggressive, right? Well, Rondo was beating, a lot of the times it'd be like CJ McCollum in one-on-ones or in pick and rolls, or it was Lillard who he would be defended by, and then it'd be a kind of similar thing. Him and Jrue did this for a decent amount of the series. I mean, the Warriors just have better perimeter defenders than CJ and Dame, right? Between Klay, Durant, Iguodala, and that's a big one, Iguodala, by the way. We could talk about that. Curry, if he plays, he's a better defender than Dame and CJ, as long as he can move well enough. We don't know what the ankle. I guess Quinn Cook could be potentially vulnerable, but I mean, if this series starts to get really tight, then Kerr is going to tighten up the lineups. So between all that, I think they're going to have some tougher times. And then, of course, the other element to all this is Draymond and his ability to just kind of plug in any kind of defensive holes that the Warriors may have, as long as Draymond's just going to be himself, you know? Now if we can continue with Draymond and we can just extend that out to him versus Anthony Davis, which is a pretty big matchup. I mean, they won't start the games on each other, I don't think, because Anthony Davis is going to start at center, Draymond's going to start at power forward, but of course the real Warriors are with Draymond at center. And I mean, it's interesting because I think Draymond, he actually will do an okay job against Anthony Davis if he's defending him in the low post. because he can just rough him up, and Draymond's like impossible to move down there. However, AD definitely has an athleticism advantage when it comes to transition, pick and rolls, pick and pops, and all that stuff. But I have to assume that if Draymond's good to go, he's going to do a better job against Anthony Davis than anybody did on the Blazers. I mean, he's more athletic than Nurkic. He's stronger than Zach Collins. He's either more athletic, stronger, or both than all of Portland's bigs. So I think he'll do better. I mean, Anthony Davis is probably still going to go off because he's Anthony Davis. He's also probably going to grab a lot of offensive rebounds, which that's always an interesting factor. And I think that's the one thing with not having DeMarcus Cousins right now is from a size standpoint, you'd be able to do some real damage against these guys. And Boogie would be a really big matchup problem for any of the Warriors centers, besides when Draymond is at center, you know. But unfortunately, you don't have him. Now, another thing when we talk about Draymond is he probably will be defending Mirotic for a decent amount of the series, and Mirotic is someone you have to respect from outside. So if Draymond wants to provide help, but you have this knockdown shooter at the 4, that'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, I don't know. I could picture the Warriors getting kind of crazy, and they'll have someone else defend Mirotic, and then they'll have Draymond on maybe someone like Rondo. And Draymond is smart enough to where he wouldn't totally ignore Rondo the way the Blazers did in certain situations of round 1. Rondo's tricky because you can definitely leave him wide open at certain moments, depending on how the play is developing, and if the angle to get him the ball isn't really there from the ball handler, well then you can totally load up on the paint. But you do have to be ready to get back to him because he's good enough from 3 to where if he's just totally wide open from the corner, he's probably going to knock it down, right? But if you can just get a hand up on him, then you can be pretty okay, because Rondo, through all of his improvement as a shooter, he's still not a natural from out there. So yeah, I mean, he only took like, 2.5 threes at the most this season, while his percentage got better. So, yeah. Now, the Pelicans, I guess they could try some lineups where they just have as much shooting out there as possible, which would be like E'Twaun Moore, Jrue, Darius Miller, Mirotic, and Anthony Davis, you know, which could really limit OKC's... or not OKC, I don't even know why I was thinking about them, could really limit the Warriors' ability to help and do Warriors things on defense. But who knows? I mean, Golden State could just switch everything, and they might have a problem dealing with that. So I don't know. There's a lot of elements to this series. I think ultimately where I'm going to go to, even if Curry is not in there, is that Kevin Durant could actually play better than Anthony Davis in a 7-game series. He's one of the few in the league who can do it. So for that reason, I probably still have to pick the Warriors. Like, let's say everything goes right for the Pelicans. We'll say Jrue Holiday continues his defensive impact from round 1. We'll say the Warriors do a better job of dealing with playoff Rondo, but he still has a quality series where he's getting into the teeth of the defense and he's finishing layups and he's making plays for other guys. We'll say his defense is also still pretty okay. We'll say Draymond has more trouble on Anthony Davis than I assume he's going to. And we can even say that Iguodala's defense is not totally there. And I guess I can talk about this a little bit more. Iguodala wasn't totally 100% this season. Maybe not in terms of health, but just in terms of giving a crap. He would pick his spots defensively. I mean, we've seen Iguodala at his best to be like maybe the best perimeter defender in the NBA. And one of the guys who can actually bother LeBron James. And at this point in his career, he's pretty much saving it for the playoffs. And this series could be the first series where he really has to bust out the defense. So we'll see what happens with Iguodala. Maybe they got to put him on Jrue sometimes. Who knows? But yeah, we'll say if he is Also a little disappointing on defense. We're going to say all those things are not right for the Warriors, and we'll say Curry only plays 1 or 2 games. He has a setback in the injury, whatever. Just everything goes wrong. Kevin Durant can still bail them out of this series because he can actually match Anthony Davis in terms of points. Durant's playmaking always takes a step up in the playoffs. And yeah. Now, if Curry comes back and Curry plays like 4 games of this series, then it's over and they're going to win. Because even if Curry is 80%, the fact that he exists on the floor just creates so many offensive opportunities for the Warriors. So I'm going to say this is like a 5 or 6 game series, something like that. I think the Pelicans will have some competitive games. They could even blow the Warriors out one time in New Orleans, but I would have to say that the Warriors are going to win this thing. And yeah, we get one step closer to our Rockets-Warriors Western Conference Finals. So anyway, that's going to do it. Once again, new podcast in the description, talking about Thunder Jazz, crazy comeback, previewing Game 6, and that's it.